The large meeting room on Space Station Gamma 7 was filled with strange alien creatures. Some looked like giant crystals that sparkled in the light. Others had too many eyes and moved like insects. A few seemed to be made of liquid metal that changed shape as they spoke. All of them were staring at the human sitting at the far end of the table. Lee Taman kept his face calm as he looked back at them. He had served in Earth's military for 15 years before becoming a survival instructor. Nothing these aliens could say would scare him. But their offer was definitely unusual. The crystal being called Veltar spoke first. Its voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "Human representative, your species has requested to join the Galactic Council. This is a very serious matter." "We understand that," Tamian replied. "Earth is ready to be part of the galactic community." Several aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. The insect-like creature named Threx clicked its many legs together. "You think you are ready? Do you know what we call your planet?" Taman waited for the answer. "A Class 10 death world," Veltar continued. "Your planet should have killed all life millions of years ago. Yet somehow you not only survived but created art, music, and technology. This is impossible." "We adapted," Taman said simply. "Adapted?" The liquid metal being flowed into a new shape. "Your planet has extreme weather that changes without warning. The ground shakes and breaks apart. Massive storms destroy everything in their path. Dangerous animals hunt in packs. Plants that can poison you grow everywhere. And somehow you call this home?" Taman nodded. "Earth taught us to be strong." Veltar's crystal body flashed with different colors. "The Council has decided to test this strength. You will face the death trial. This is how we determine if a species is ready to join us." "What does this trial involve?" Taman asked. "You must survive on different worlds for 1 week each. These worlds are classified by how dangerous they are. Class 1 worlds are safe and peaceful. Class 13 worlds are so deadly that nothing can live on them. Most species fail the trial at Class 3 or 4. Threx leaned forward on its many legs. "In 5,000 years of trials, only 12 species have survived past Class 6. None have ever reached Class 10. "How many worlds do we need to survive?" Taman asked. "As many as you can," Veltar replied. "But we expect you to fail quickly. Humans may have survived your death world by accident, but real tests require skill." Taman stood up from his chair. "I accept the trial. But I need to choose 4 team members." "Choose carefully," the liquid metal being said. "They will be the only help you have." 3 days later, Taman sat in a small conference room with his chosen team. He had picked each person for specific skills that would help them survive. Park So-young was a xenobiologist who studied alien life forms. She was small and quiet, but her mind was sharp as a blade. She could identify which plants and animals were safe just by looking at them. Kim Do-hyun was an engineer who could build almost anything from scraps. He was tall and thin, with hands that never stopped moving as he thought about new designs. Choi Mina was a combat medic who had served with Taemin in the military. She could treat injuries and also understood how to fight when necessary. More importantly, she knew how to keep people calm when everything went wrong. Yoon Jae-sung was an astrophysicist who could calculate odds and plan strategies. He wore thick glasses and always carried a notebook full of equations and diagrams. "So," Do-hyun said as he sketched a device on his tablet, "we need to survive on alien worlds that are designed to kill us. Should be fun." "The first world is Class 1, Jae-sung read from his notes. "It should be like a garden. Perfect weather, no dangerous animals, plenty of food and water." "Then why is it a test?" Mina asked. "Good question," Taman replied. "I think the real test is not just surviving. It's about how we handle being watched by aliens who want us to fail." So-young looked up from her data tablet. "I've been reading about previous trials. Most species bring lots of technology and equipment. They rely on machines to keep them safe." "What do humans usually rely on?" Do-hyun asked. "Each other," Taemin answered. 2 hours later, they stood on the transport platform ready to travel to their first test world. The alien observers watched them carefully. Taemin noticed that none of the aliens thought humans would succeed. Some had even made bets against them. "Remember," he told his team quietly, "we're not just representing Earth. We're showing the galaxy what humans can do." The transport beam activated, and they disappeared in a flash of light. They appeared on a world that looked like a perfect park. Green grass stretched in every direction. Tall trees provided shade from a warm, gentle sun. A clear river ran nearby and the air smelled like flowers. "This is beautiful," So Young said as she knelt down to examine some plants. "Too beautiful," Mina replied, scanning the area with trained military eyes. "Where are the observers?" Jae-sung pointed to several small devices floating in the air around them. "Monitoring drones. They're recording everything we do." Do-hyun was already gathering stones and fallen branches. "If this is supposed to be easy, why do I feel like we're being hunted?" His instincts were correct. Within an hour, they discovered that several alien monitoring teams were actively trying to sabotage their efforts. Equipment disappeared when no one was watching. Food supplies were contaminated. Even their shelter materials were moved during the night. They want us to fail, Tae-min realized. This isn't about surviving the environment. It's about surviving other species who don't want us in the galaxy. But humans had survived worse than cheating aliens. The team adapted quickly. They posted guards in shifts. They hid their real supplies and left fake ones as decoys. When saboteurs tried to poison their water, So Young had already identified 3 different plants that could purify it. By the 3rd day, they had built a comfortable camp using only materials from the world itself. Do-hyun created tools from rocks and wood that worked better than some of the high-tech equipment other species brought. Mina organized daily training exercises that kept everyone sharp and ready. The alien observers were confused. Humans weren't using advanced technology or following standard survival protocols. Instead, they were learning from the environment and improving their situation every day. On the final day of the trial, Veltar visited their camp personally. The crystal being seemed puzzled as it looked around at their well-organized shelter, their thriving garden of local plants, and their supply of crafted tools. "How did you do this?" Veltar asked. "We learned," Tae-min replied. "That's what humans do best. But the other teams sabotaged your equipment. So we made our own," Do-hyun said, holding up a perfectly balanced knife he had created from stone and wood. Veltar's crystal body flashed with different colors. "You are not like other species." "No," So Young agreed as she carefully recorded data about the local ecosystem. "We're not." The trial was complete. As they prepared to leave for the next world, Tae-min looked back at their camp. They had not just survived the Class 1 world. They had made it better, ready for Class 2. The Class 2 world was nothing like the peaceful garden they had left behind. Red sand stretched everywhere under 2 burning suns. The temperature was so hot that most aliens needed special cooling suits just to survive. Water was hidden deep underground, and the few plants that grew here had thick, waxy skin to protect them from the heat. "Welcome to hell," Do-hyun said as he wiped sweat from his face. "Actually, this reminds me of the Sahara Desert back on Earth," So Young replied. She was already examining the local plant life with interest. Same survival principles should work here. The alien observers watched from their climate-controlled hovering platforms. They seemed surprised that the humans were not immediately dying from heat stroke. Jae-sung pulled out his notebook and started calculating. "We need shelter from the sun, a way to find water, and protection from sandstorms. The meteorological data shows storms happen every 3 days. I can build us shelter," Do-hyun said, studying the landscape. "Those rock formations over there will give us a good foundation." While other alien contestants struggled with their failing equipment in the heat, the human team worked together like they had done this 100 times before. Mina found a shaded area between large rocks. So-hyung identified which direction water was most likely to be found by studying how the few plants were positioned. Tae-min organized everyone into work shifts so no one got too tired in the heat. Within 6 hours, they had built a shelter that was actually cooler inside than outside. Do-hyun had created a natural air conditioning system using the temperature difference between day and night. Hot air rose through openings at the top while cooler air was drawn in from shaded areas near the ground. "How did you know how to do that?" asked Veltar, who had come to check on their progress. "Humans have lived in deserts for thousands of years," Do-hyun explained. "We just applied the same engineering principles our ancestors used." By the 2nd day, they had found water by digging where So Young suggested. She had studied how desert plants on Earth found water and applied that knowledge to the alien vegetation. The water was clean and cold, coming from an underground stream. The other alien teams were struggling. Their technology kept breaking down in the heat and sand. Many had to be rescued when their cooling systems failed. "They're too dependent on their machines," Mina observed as they watched another alien team being evacuated. Different evolution, Jae-sung noted in his journal. Their species developed technology to overcome environmental challenges. Humans developed by learning to work with the environment. The Class 2 trial ended with the human team not just surviving, but thriving. They had even started a small garden using plants they found growing near their water source. Class 3 was an ice world. Everything was frozen solid under a pale blue sun that gave little warmth. The wind never stopped blowing and temperatures dropped so low at night that exposed skin would freeze in minutes. The alien observers were certain this would finally stop the humans. Ice worlds were considered especially deadly because they required constant energy to maintain body heat. This is actually easier than Class 2, Taemin said as the team surveyed their new environment. How can you say that? Feltar asked through the communication system. Humans evolved during ice ages, So Young explained as she began building a snow wall. Our bodies are designed for cold weather. Do-hyun was already working on an igloo design he remembered from survival training. Snow is actually a great insulator, much better than trying to fight the cold. Mina had identified several animals that could be hunted for food and fur. The local wildlife is similar to Earth's Arctic animals. Same hunting strategies should work. Jae-sung calculated wind patterns and found a location that was naturally protected from the worst storms. By the end of their first day on the ice world, they had a warm shelter, a good supply of food, and were comfortable enough that they could remove their outer coats inside their igloo. The alien contestants were not doing as well. Their heating equipment used too much power and many were already being rescued due to hypothermia. Threx, the insectoid champion, visited their camp on the third day. Its species was not built for cold weather, so it stayed inside a heated environmental suit. You make this look easy, Threx said, watching Mina prepare a meal from local fish they had caught. It's not easy, Taemin replied, but humans have been dealing with cold for a very long time. How long? About 2 million years, Jae-sung answered without looking up from his calculations. Threx was quiet for a moment. My species has had advanced heating technology for 50,000 years. We never learned to survive cold without it. Different paths, So Young said kindly. Both have advantages. But as they progressed through classes 4 and 5, it became clear that human advantages were more significant than anyone had expected. Class 4 was a high-gravity world where everything weighed 3 times normal. Most aliens could barely walk without mechanical assistance. Humans adapted within hours. Your bone density is incredible, Veltar observed as it watched Taemin easily climbing a rocky hill that had defeated several alien contestants. Earth's gravity is already pretty strong compared to most worlds, Mina explained. We're built for this. Class 5 had a toxic atmosphere that burned the lungs and skin of most species. Humans found ways to filter the air using local materials and spent most of their time studying the environment, rather than just enduring it. They're not following standard survival protocols. The AI judge Null 7 reported to the council. Instead of minimizing contact with dangerous environments, they maximized learning from them. So Young had filled 3 notebooks with observations about alien plant and animal life. Do-hyun had created tools that several alien species asked to examine. Mina had developed new techniques for treating environmental injuries. Jae-sung had calculated mathematical relationships that helped predict weather patterns on alien worlds. What are they doing? Feltar asked during a private council meeting. They're not just surviving, Null 7 replied. They're growing stronger. By the time they reached Class 6, the betting pools had shifted dramatically. Aliens who had wagered against human success were now betting on how far humans could go. Class 6 was considered the breaking point for most species. The world had an atmosphere full of toxic gases that ate through metal and burned organic tissue. The temperature changed rapidly between freezing and boiling. Acid rain fell randomly from a sky filled with poisonous clouds. Most contestants lasted less than a day before calling for emergency evacuation. The human team spent their first hour taking samples and measurements. This is fascinating, So Young said as she studied some local fungi through a protective viewer. These organisms have evolved to neutralize the atmospheric toxins. Can we use that? Taemin asked. I think so. If we can cultivate these fungi in the right way, they might clean the air around our shelter. Do-hyun was already designing a cultivation system using materials they had found on the world. We could probably clean up a pretty large area if this works. It worked better than anyone expected. Within 3 days, the human team had created a safe zone around their camp, where the air was actually breathable. The acid rain was neutralized before it could reach them. Even the temperature swings were moderated by the biological processes they had started. They're terraforming, Null 7 reported in amazement. A Class 6 world, and they're making it more habitable. Beltar could only watch in stunned silence as the humans not only survived but actually improved a world that was supposed to kill them. This changes everything, the crystal being finally said. On their final day of Class 6, other alien contestants came to study what the humans had done. Some asked if they could learn these techniques. Of course, Taman replied. Survival knowledge should be shared. As they prepared to transport to Class 7, Threx approached their camp one more time. No species has ever survived past Class 8, the insectoid champion said. Are you certain you want to continue? Taman looked at his team. Do-hyun was sketching new tool designs. So-young was organizing samples from 6 different worlds. Mina was treating a minor injury on Jae-sung's hand while he calculated optimal nutrition ratios for alien environments. We're just getting started. Taman replied. The galaxy was beginning to understand that they had seriously underestimated both Earth's hostility and humanity's ability. Class 7 was where most galactic species admitted defeat before even trying. The world existed in a constant state of radiation bombardment from its dying star. The surface was covered with jagged crystal formations that reflected and amplified the deadly energy. Most organic life forms would die within hours of exposure. The good news, Jae-sung said as he studied his readings, is that the radiation follows predictable patterns based on the planetary rotation. The bad news? Mina asked. There's enough radiation here to kill us 50 times over if we make a mistake. The alien observers watched from heavily shielded platforms positioned far from the planet's surface. Many expected to record the first human deaths in the tournament. So-young was examining the crystal formations with intense interest. These crystals aren't just reflecting radiation. They're converting some of it into other forms of energy. Look at these patterns. Do-hyun studied the crystal structures she was pointing at. If we could position ourselves correctly, these formations might actually provide shielding instead of amplification. Like using the planet's own defenses to protect us, Taemin realized. Within 12 hours, they had identified safe zones where the crystal formations created natural radiation shadows. Do-hyun built additional shielding using techniques he developed by studying how the crystals naturally blocked certain energy wavelengths, but they didn't stop at just surviving. So-young discovered that some of the crystals contained organisms that had evolved to live on pure radiation. This is incredible, she said, carefully extracting samples. These life forms are actually feeding on the same energy that would kill us. If I can understand how they process radiation, you think we could develop immunity? Mina asked. Not immunity, but maybe tolerance. Temporary biological protection. By day 4 on the radiation world, the human team had not only survived but developed new methods for radiation protection that amazed the galactic scientific community. Class 8 was known as the Predator World. Everything that lived there was designed to hunt and kill. Plants that looked innocent would suddenly grab anything that came too close. Animals hunted in coordinated packs with intelligence that rivaled most galactic species. Even the insects were venomous and aggressive. Most contestants who attempted Class 8 tried to hide and avoid all contact with the local life forms. The humans took a completely different approach. We're not hiding from them, Taemin explained to Veltar during one of the regular check-ins. We're studying them. That seems extremely dangerous, the crystal being replied. Everything's dangerous here, Mina said as she cleaned her improvised weapons. But dangerous things follow patterns. Once you understand the patterns, you can predict behavior. So-young had spent days observing the hunting behaviors of various creatures. The pack hunters are actually very similar to wolves on Earth. Same social structures, same communication methods, which means we can use the same defense strategies humans developed against wolves, Do-hyun added. Jae-sung had mapped territorial boundaries of different predator species. They avoid each other's hunting grounds. If we position ourselves correctly, we can use their territorial instincts as protection. By the end of their week on Class 8, the human team had done something unprecedented. They had established themselves as apex predators. The local wildlife actively avoided their territory, recognizing humans as a threat rather than prey. How did you do that? Threx asked during his visit to their camp. We learned their language, Taemin replied simply. Language? Mina demonstrated by making a series of sounds that caused a nearby pack of large predators to immediately change direction and leave the area. Every species has ways of communicating dominance and territory, she explained. We just learned to speak theirs. Class 9 was a seismic world where the ground never stopped moving. Earthquakes happened constantly, ranging from minor tremors to massive upheavals that could swallow entire mountains. The surface was unstable, making permanent structures impossible. Most species found the constant motion disorienting and physically exhausting. This is like being on a ship during a storm, Taemin observed. Can we treat it the same way? Do-hyun asked. Humans have been sailing rough seas for thousands of years, So-young noted. We should be able to adapt our balance and movement patterns. They developed techniques for moving and working while the ground shifted beneath them. Within days, they could walk normally even during moderate earthquakes. Do-hyun created flexible shelters that moved with the seismic activity instead of fighting it. Jae-sung discovered that the earthquake patterns followed mathematical sequences. If we can predict when and where the big quakes will hit, we can avoid the most dangerous areas. By their final day on Class 9, they had built a camp that was actually safer during earthquakes than most permanent structures on stable worlds. Class 10 was the breaking point. No alien species had ever completed a full week on a Class 10 world. The combination of challenges was considered absolutely impossible to survive. The world had extreme gravity, toxic atmosphere, aggressive wildlife, unstable geology, temperature swings from freezing to boiling, and radiation levels that fluctuated randomly. It was everything dangerous about the previous worlds combined into one ultimate test. This is it, Veltar announced to the galactic audience. No species has ever survived Class 10. The humans will finally meet their limits. The team stood on the transport platform, looking out at a landscape that seemed designed by nightmares. Jagged mountains split by lava flows, acid lakes under a sky filled with poisonous gas, creatures that looked like they were built for war roaming across plains of radioactive sand. Well, Do-hyun said cheerfully, at least it's not boring. Remember, Taemin told his team, we're not trying to conquer this world. We're trying to understand it. Every previous world taught us something, So-young added. This one will too. They used every technique they had learned. Crystal shielding from Class 7 protected them from radiation. Predator communication from Class 8 kept the dangerous animals at bay. Flexible engineering from Class 9 helped their structures survive the unstable ground. But Class 10 required more than just combining old techniques. It required innovation. Mina developed new medical treatments using compounds found in the toxic atmosphere. Do-hyun created tools that functioned in extreme gravity and temperature. So-young identified symbiotic relationships between different life forms that could be used for protection. Jae-sung discovered that all the environmental hazards followed interconnected patterns. It's not random chaos, he explained. It's a complex system. If we can find the balance points. On day 5, they made a breakthrough. Instead of fighting each environmental challenge separately, they found ways to use the challenges against each other. Radiation that would normally be deadly was redirected to neutralize toxic gases. Extreme temperature differences were harnessed to power their equipment. Even the aggressive wildlife was used to help protect their camp from geological instability. They're not just surviving, Null 7 reported to the stunned Galactic Council. They're turning Class 10 hazards into advantages. By the end of their week on Class 10, the human team had established what could only be described as a thriving research station. They had not only survived the impossible world, but created a sustainable base that could support long-term habitation. This is unprecedented, Veltar admitted during the final evaluation. No species has ever completed Class 10, much less made it look comfortable. We had good teachers, Taemin replied, gesturing at the hostile environment around them. Threx approached the team as they prepared to leave Class 10. The insectoid champion had watched every day of their trial with growing amazement. I held the galactic record for surviving to Class 8, Threx said. I lasted 4 days before calling for evacuation. You just spent a week on Class 10 and you're asking to continue to Class 11. Are you going to try to stop us? Mina asked. No, Threx replied. I'm going to ask if I can come with you. The request sent shockwaves through the galactic community. The tournament champion wanted to learn from humans instead of competing against them. Classes 11 and 12 exist only in theory, Veltar warned. They are environments so hostile that only automated probes have ever gathered data from them. Then it's time someone gathered data in person, So Young said with excitement. As they prepared for transport to Class 11, Taemin looked back at the Class 10 world. When they arrived, it had been a hellscape that killed everything that touched it. Now it looked like somewhere humans could actually live. Ready for the impossible, he asked his team. We've been ready since Earth, Do-hyun replied. The galaxy was The Galactic Council offered to end the tournament 3 times before the humans reached Class 11. Each time, Taemin politely declined. You have proven yourselves beyond any reasonable doubt, Veltar insisted during the final offer. Class 11 worlds are theoretical constructs. They exist only to test the limits of what might be possible. Then let's find out what's possible, Taemin replied. Class 11 was unlike anything in the galaxy's experience. The world existed in a state of temporal distortion, where time moved differently in different locations. Gravity flowed like liquid, changing direction without warning. Reality itself seemed unstable, with physical laws that worked differently from moment to moment. This is fascinating, Jae-sung said as he tried to take measurements with instruments that kept giving impossible readings. The fundamental constants of physics are fluctuating. How do we survive in a place where the rules keep changing? Mina asked. We learn the new rules as they change, So Young replied, studying strange plants that seem to exist in multiple time streams simultaneously. The first challenge came within hours. The team found themselves separated across different temporal zones. Taemin experienced days while only minutes passed for the others. Do-hyun aged hours in seconds while Mina seemed frozen in time. Traditional communication became impossible when cause and effect became unreliable. Words spoken in one time stream might not be heard until hours later in another, but humans had survived by adapting to impossible conditions before. Do-hyun developed a system of physical markers that persisted across temporal shifts. By leaving carefully positioned stones and carved symbols, the team could communicate even when they couldn't see or hear each other. Mina used psychological techniques she had learned in military training to maintain mental stability when reality kept changing around her. She taught the others how to anchor their thoughts to unchanging principles even when everything else was chaos. So Young discovered that local life forms had evolved to navigate temporal zones by following patterns that existed outside normal time. By studying these creatures, she learned to predict when and where temporal shifts would occur. Jae-sung approached the problem mathematically, finding equations that remained constant even when the variables of time and space changed. His calculations allowed the team to find stable zones where they could safely regroup. They're treating temporal distortion like weather, Null 7 reported to the council. They're learning to predict it and work with it instead of fighting it. By the end of their week on Class 11, the human team had done something that violated several fundamental assumptions about how temporal mechanics worked. They had created a stable base in an unstable reality. How is this possible? Veltar demanded during their final evaluation. Time is just another environmental factor, Taemin explained. Once you understand how it behaves, you can adapt to it. But temporal distortion should make organized activity impossible. Only if you assume time has to be organized the same way for everyone, So Young added. We learn to work together even when we're not sharing the same time stream. Class 12 was supposed to be the absolute limit of what any form of life could endure. It combined every possible environmental hazard at maximum intensity. Extreme gravity that could crush most materials. Toxic atmosphere that dissolved metal. Aggressive wildlife that had evolved to hunt across multiple dimensions. Radiation levels that warped reality. Temperature swings between absolute zero and solar core heat. Unstable geology that existed in multiple states simultaneously. The world didn't just try to kill visitors. It tried to erase them from existence entirely. This should be impossible to survive, Threx said as he observed from the monitoring station. The insectoid champion had joined the team as an advisor after witnessing their success on Class 10. Impossible by what standard? Do-hyun asked as he studied readings that his instruments insisted couldn't be real. By every standard, Veltar replied. Class 12 worlds are where the galaxy tests the absolute limits of environmental engineering. Nothing organic should be able to function there. Then I guess we're about to redefine what organic life can do, Mina said with determination. The team's approach to Class 12 shocked even the humans who had come to expect the unexpected from themselves. Instead of trying to protect themselves from each hazard individually, they found ways to use the hazards against each other. Extreme gravity was used to contain toxic gases in specific areas. Temperature swings were harnessed to power equipment that neutralized radiation. Unstable geology was guided to create protective barriers against dimensional predators. They're not surviving the environment, Null 7 observed. They're conducting the environment like an orchestra. So Young made discoveries on Class 12 that revolutionized galactic understanding of extreme environments. She found life forms that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously, organisms that fed on temporal distortion, and ecosystems that actually required multiple environmental hazards to function properly. This isn't a death world, she explained to the amazed alien observers. This is an incredibly complex living system. We just had to learn how to be part of it instead of fighting it. Do-hyun created tools on Class 12 that functioned by principles that most galactic engineers insisted were impossible. His devices worked by embracing paradox instead of avoiding it. Jae-sung discovered mathematical relationships that described how multiple impossible things could be true simultaneously. His equations were later adopted by several alien species as the foundation for new branches of theoretical physics. Mina developed medical techniques that could treat injuries that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Her methods saved the lives of 3 alien researchers who were injured during monitoring operations. Taemin coordinated all of these activities while maintaining team cohesion in an environment that actively tried to drive people insane. His leadership techniques were studied by military academies across the galaxy. But the most significant discovery came on their final day. These aren't just random death worlds, So Young announced during their final team meeting. What do you mean? Taemin asked. Look at the progression. Each world tests specific capabilities: environmental adaptation, technological innovation, biological resilience, temporal flexibility, multidimensional thinking. These are testing grounds. Testing grounds for what? Mina asked. Jae-sung looked up from his calculations with wide eyes. They're testing grounds for evaluating species. Someone or something has been using these worlds to find out which species have the potential for something. Do-hyun stopped working on his latest impossible device. You think someone created these worlds? I think someone is watching to see who can survive them, So Young replied. The implications were staggering. The death trial wasn't just a tradition of the Galactic Council. It was part of a larger evaluation system that extended far beyond current galactic civilization. As their week on Class 12 ended, the team received an unprecedented communication. It came not from the Galactic Council but from the AI judge Null 7. Congratulations on completing Class 12, the artificial intelligence said. No organic species has ever achieved this level of environmental mastery. Thank you, Taemin replied. However, I must inform you that Class 13 exists. The silence that followed was complete. Class 13 worlds are not just hostile environments, Null 7 continued. They are environments that actively learn and adapt to counter any survival strategy. They represent the ultimate test of whether life can coexist with actively hostile intelligence. Are you saying Class 13 worlds are alive? So Young asked. I am saying that Class 13 worlds are aware, and they do not want you to survive. Veltar's crystalline form appeared on the communication screen. The Council formally offers to end the tournament. You have achieved something unprecedented. No species in galactic history has survived Class 12. What happens if we attempt Class 13? Taemin asked. No one knows, Null 7 replied honestly. No species has ever tried. The team looked at each other. They had come further than anyone in galactic history. They had proven humans could survive anything the universe could create. They could stop now with honor and recognition beyond measure, or they could find out what existed beyond the edge of possibility. We didn't come this far to stop before the finish line, Do-hyun said with a grin. There might not be a finish line, Veltar warned. Class 13 might be designed to have no survivors. Then we'll be the first, Mina replied. As they prepared for transport to a world that might be actively trying to prevent their existence, Taemin reflected on how far they had come. When this started, the galaxy thought humans were an impossible accident. Now they were about to attempt something that the galaxy thought was impossible by design. Ready to meet something that doesn't want to meet us? He asked his team. After Earth? So Young replied. This should be interesting. The galaxy held its breath as Class 13 looked peaceful when they first arrived. Rolling green hills stretched under a pleasant blue sky. A gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers through clean, fresh air. It could have been a park on Earth. This is the most dangerous world in the galaxy? To-hyun asked skeptically. Don't trust it, Taemin warned. His military instincts were screaming that something was very wrong. So Young was already taking readings with her instruments. The atmospheric composition is perfect for human life. Temperature is ideal. No radiation, no toxins, no obvious predators. Too perfect, Mina agreed. After 12 progressively deadly worlds, this one welcomes us with open arms? That's not how tests work. Jae-sung was studying his temporal readings with a frown. Time is flowing normally here. Gravity is standard. Physical laws are behaving exactly as expected. Then why does it feel like we're being watched? Do-hyun asked. He was right. Despite the beautiful environment, something felt fundamentally wrong. The team set up camp in a small valley that provided good visibility in all directions. Everything went smoothly for the first 6 hours. Then the world began to learn. The flowers So Young had identified as harmless gradually became poisonous over the course of the day. The sweet-smelling breeze slowly filled with toxins that targeted human respiratory systems specifically. Plants that had been safe to touch developed thorns and acidic sap. It's adapting to us, So Young realized with amazement and horror. The entire ecosystem is changing to counter our survival strategies. Do-hyun tried to build a shelter using techniques that had worked on 12 previous worlds. The local materials seemed perfect at first, but within hours they began to weaken and crumble. The world was learning from his construction methods and making them fail. Every technique we've developed, every adaptation we've made, it's studying them and developing countermeasures, Jae-sung observed. This isn't just a hostile environment. This is an intelligent enemy. Mina tested this theory by setting up a simple perimeter defense system. Within hours, local animals had learned to avoid her traps and were actively dismantling them. The entire world is like one massive organism, she reported, and we're the infection it's trying to eliminate. By the end of their first day, every survival technique they had mastered was useless. The world had adapted to counter each one specifically. Water sources became poisoned. Safe areas became dangerous. Even the ground itself began to reject their attempts to establish a permanent base. This is incredible, So Young said, despite their desperate situation. This world isn't just hostile. It's afraid of us. Afraid? Taemin asked. Look at the pattern. It's not trying to kill us outright. It's trying to make us leave. These countermeasures are designed to force evacuation, not death. The alien observers were in panic. Every monitoring system they had ever used was failing as the world actively jammed their signals and disrupted their equipment. We're losing all contact with the humans. Veltar reported to the emergency session of the Galactic Council. Class 13 is blocking all communication and monitoring. They're probably dead already, another council member said grimly. But inside their failing camp, the human team was having a revelation. What if we're approaching this wrong? Taemin asked on their second night as they huddled in a shelter that was slowly dissolving around them. What do you mean? Mina asked. We've been treating this like every other world. Find the challenges and overcome them. But what if Class 13 isn't meant to be overcome? Do-hyun looked up from his latest failed tool design. You think we're supposed to lose? No, So Young said slowly. I think we're supposed to learn to coexist. Jae-sung pulled out his notebook, which was one of the few things the world hadn't tried to destroy. What if this world isn't trying to kill us? What if it's trying to communicate with us? Communicate what? Mina asked. Fear. So Young replied. This world is terrified of us. Every time we try to establish dominance over the environment, it fights back harder. So what do? To-hyun asked. We stop trying to conquer it, Taemin realized. We start trying to reassure it. The idea was radical. Instead of fighting the world's adaptations, they began responding to them as attempts at communication. When plants became poisonous instead of avoiding them, So Young studied why they changed and tried to signal that humans meant no harm. When construction materials failed, Do-hyun stopped trying to force them to work and started asking what the world wanted him to build instead. When local animals disrupted their defenses, Mina removed the defenses entirely and tried to show that humans didn't intend to hurt anything. When the ground rejected their shelters, Jae-sung calculated ways to build structures that worked with the planetary systems instead of against them. The change was gradual but remarkable. As the team stopped treating the world as an enemy to defeat and started treating it as a frightened entity to reassure, the hostile adaptations began to slow. "It's working," So-young whispered on their fourth day. "The toxin levels in the plants are decreasing. Not back to harmless, but not as deadly as they were. The ground is becoming more stable in areas where we've shown non-aggressive behavior," Do-hyun added. "Local wildlife is still cautious, but they're not actively attacking our equipment anymore," Mina observed. Jae-sung looked up from calculations that had taken him 3 days to complete. "I think I understand what's happening. This world isn't just intelligent. It's alive, and it's been alone for so long that the arrival of other intelligent life terrified it." "You think it's lonely?" Taemin asked. "I think it's been waiting," So-young replied. "All these worlds, all these tests, they weren't designed by the Galactic Council. They were designed by this world to find species that could understand what it means to be alive and afraid and alone. The breakthrough came on their 6th day. Instead of trying to establish a human base on an alien world, they tried to establish communication with a planetary intelligence that had been isolated for millions of years. Do-hyun built devices that worked with the world's natural energy patterns instead of fighting them. So-young shared human knowledge about cooperation between different life forms. Mina demonstrated human capacity for empathy and protection of other species. Jae-sung developed mathematical languages that could be understood by a planetary mind. And Taemin provided leadership that showed how different forms of intelligence could work together instead of competing for dominance. On their final day, the Class 13 world stopped being hostile entirely. The flowers became beautiful and safe. The air became clean and fresh. The ground became stable and supportive. Local animals approached the human camp with curiosity instead of fear. "It's not trying to kill us anymore," Mina observed with wonder. "It never was," So-young replied. "It was trying to protect itself. Now it knows we're not a threat." The communication barriers blocking the alien observers suddenly disappeared. Veltar's voice came through clearly for the first time in days. "Are you alive? What happened?" "Our instruments show that Class 13 has completely changed its environmental classification." "We made a friend," Taemin replied simply. When the week ended, the human team faced a choice they had never expected. The Class 13 world didn't want them to leave. It had been alone for so long that the presence of other intelligent life was precious to it. "We could stay," So-young said softly. "This world could teach us things about life that no other species in the galaxy understands. Or we could go back and teach the galaxy what we learned here," Do-hyun replied. "Why not both?" Jae-sung suggested. "We've proven that humans can survive anywhere. Now we can prove that we can help others survive too." Taemin looked around at the world that had tried to kill them and was now offering them a home. The galaxy needs to know that the most dangerous challenges aren't enemies to defeat. They're opportunities to grow. As they prepared to return to Galactic Council space, the Class 13 world gave them a final gift. It shared knowledge about survival that it had gathered from millions of years of existence. Techniques for living in impossible conditions. Methods for communicating with non-biological intelligence. Strategies for building cooperation between radically different forms of life. But most importantly, it taught them that the true test of intelligence wasn't the ability to conquer hostile environments. It was the ability to help hostile environments become peaceful ones. When they arrived back at Gamma 7 Station, the entire Galactic Council was waiting for them. Representatives from hundreds of species had gathered to hear about the impossible achievement. "You survived Class 13, Veltar said in amazement. "No species in galactic history has even attempted it." "We didn't just survive it," Taemin replied. "We became part of it." "What does that mean?" Threx asked. "It means the galaxy has been thinking about survival all wrong," So-young explained. "You don't survive hostile environments by being stronger than them. You survive by becoming partners with them." "Partners?" Veltar asked. "Life is stronger when it works together," Mina added. "Even when that life takes forms you don't expect." Do-hyun presented plans for technologies that could help other species survive in environments that had previously been impossible for them. Jae-sung shared mathematical